I'm very happy to be here. This is my first talk since like 2018, so I'm yeah, skills are rusty, but yeah. So I'm going to talk about structured logging in Ruby, and short introduction. My name is Peter Solnica. I'm from Poland, from Krakow, so yeah, short distance from here. You can find me online in places, and I've worked on a bunch of Ruby projects, and specifically, I wrote a logger gem, one of many logger gems in Ruby, and that's also why I'm here, because I know something about this topic. I'm a former core team member of the Hanami project and creator of Ruby Object Mapper. Unfortunately, I moved to other things as my time is constrained, but I'm still doing Ruby. In Sentry, where I maintain the Ruby SDK and Elixir SDKs. And coincidentally, we actually added support for structured logging last year, and Ruby was one of the first SDKs. Surprise, surprise. And yeah, let's dive in. So I'm going to cover actually a bunch of topics in a very short time. But structured logging is like really related to all those things. So we will talk about that. So observability is the first one. Then I will talk about structured logging and events and how they are related to logging. And we're going to take a look at the Ruby ecosystem and Logger itself, how it's used in frameworks, and what we could do next to improve the ecosystem. So quickly about observability. Again, a very big topic, but overall, this really boils down to just one thing, understanding what your system is doing by like looking at it from the outside. So without like diving into code, you have a lot of data, a lot of information presented in various ways that allow you to understand what the hell is going on. The important aspect of observability is to understand like the internal state of your system. So your app, your system is doing something at any given point in time. It's in some state. And when things are happening, there is this state that we can capture and log it and like display it somehow using various solutions, various tools. And this external output sort of analysis allows us to understand what the system is doing. So why does it matter? It matters, especially these days where our systems, our applications are very complex. They often consist of multiple systems talking to each other with like services, microservices, whatnot. It's becoming harder and harder to understand what's going on. That's why we started with basic things like monitoring, but observability is not just that. Some time ago, we would have things like exception notifications, and that was it. Like we were happy with just this, but things evolved, and now we need more tools. And observability is this concept that provide these tools. So there are like three pillars of observability. And the first one is logging. So this is like the most fundamental aspect of observability. You can also do things like tracing and metrics. We're not going to talk about those two topics because that's like a whole different talk or multiple talks actually. What's important to understand is that logging and what you log is a part of this sort of concept and these like three pillars. Some people will tell you that there are more pillars, but let's just skip this. So logs is the foundation. Some time ago, we would only have logs. So applications would log some information, and based on the logs, we would try to read them and understand what's going on, what our system is doing, especially useful in debugging, obviously. And when it comes to like boring definition, you can think of logs as just time-stamped information about events. So a log is always something that happens at a given point in time, with some information attached to it, right? So unlike traces, which like are comprised of multiple events that happen in like some period of time, logs are just one instance of some event. And traditionally, applications would only log using very basic text-based log entries. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this format of logging. We still use it, and it's still useful, actually. It's especially useful in development when we're working on an app and we're having some services, typically like an HTTP server or some background processing solution running, and we would just look at the logs and we would be able to relatively quickly identify certain lines that are interesting and just read them, right? But this is not good for machines, right? When we want to extract data from such logs, then things become a bit hard. And there are actually a lot of applications that do parse this type of logs and still present them in nice ways with like searchability, filters, and all kinds of features, like, I don't know, displaying graphs, but they rely on parsing log lines, which is just messy. And then there is something that I think is a bit confusing. Logging versus a logger. I think it's important to have this distinction in mind that when we talk about logging, we're talking about the concept of logging, which is storing events that are timestamped. But a logger as a tool is something that can log different things, right? And it can be used for many things. So a logger can be used for tracing, for example. A logger can be used for storing metric information. So it's just important to keep that in mind, that like, do not confuse logger as a tool with logging as a concept. And I just talked about these two things and forgot to click. Okay. Yada. Part 2. What is structured logging? So I talked about traditional logging. Let's call it traditional. Structured logging is basically taking logging to the next level. And instead of like logging just strings, storing string-based information about events, we would actually use structured data, which is much better for parsing, processing, and storing in other places to display and provide you with like more insights into what your system is doing based on such logs. Now, again, traditional logging looks like this. And something there was like a delay. And structured logging is basically passing data to the logger, and that's it. And I could stop and go home, but I won't. So the output difference is pretty clear. If we use JSON for the data structures, we would obviously have JSON in our logs. And it's kind of funny because some time ago, when Hanami 1 was about to be released, I remember Luca, the creator of Hanami, decided to use structured logging, specifically JSON-based structured logging as the default. And I was like, what? This is weird. Like you're gonna have a lot of like extra mess in your logs. This is not easy to read. And he was like, well, it's not for reading, right? It's for processing. And that was like many years ago. And right now Hanami has structured logging built in, so that's cool. So again, traditional logging is very useful for development, very useful for testing locally. But structured logging is very useful for observability and additional tools and platforms for processing them and giving you more information. Now, recently, I feel like there is a change coming because Rails introduced Event API. This was, if I remember correctly, this was the result of a rather long thread under an issue on Rails issue tracker about introducing structured logging to Rails itself. When I saw it, I think it was like 2 years ago, I was really excited because I was really waiting for something in the Ruby ecosystem that would introduce structured logging, and Rails obviously coming with a solution would make a huge difference. For some reason, I don't know what exactly happened there, they decided to stick to the logger that they have and instead introduced event API for structured events. And this is still good, but I feel like we should talk a little bit about what are events, why they are used, and what does it have to do with logging. So structured logging looks like this. And even notifications look like this. So like it looks almost the same. So it might be confusing, like why do you need both? So the thing is, both things are needed and they serve different purpose. Events as a concept are much more generic than logs because you can notify all kinds of subscribers about some event, and events can be consumed by these subscribers in different ways, depending on the environment, the configuration, your requirements, or whatever you want. So it's a very flexible way of providing information about what your system is doing and consuming it differently, right? So logging in the context of event subscribers and consuming events can be used to basically capture some events and log them in various ways. And since these events are structured, then guess what? You need structured logging, right? So if you wanted to use like a traditional built-in default Rails logger, like you wouldn't be able to use that because it doesn't support structured logging. So again, I'm not sure why they didn't introduce a structured logger. I guess it's because of some legacy concerns, or I don't know. Anyway, having events is still great. I tested it actually today, and it turned out that events are used for instrumentation as well in Rails. So that's pretty cool. So events and logging, they complement each other. They look extremely similar, but they serve different purpose. And logging can be used along with events. So yeah, even listeners often do log. And I forgot to say this. Yeah. I mean, once React everywhere. Yeah, that's what I talked about, that you can consume events in all kinds of ways, and it is a very powerful mechanism. So what about Ruby itself? What kind of tools do we have like today? The Ruby core logger in the standard library, I'm pretty sure that you are familiar with it. This is a pretty common type of logger. It supports obviously all kinds of logging levels. It supports custom formatting, but that's it. Like, you can't really do much with it. However, it is a pretty nice foundation. Other logging mechanisms, gems, use it internally for like basic type of logging. However, it's just string based, doesn't support structured logging. And as much as we like it because it's built in and it's like free, it's just not good enough for these days requirements. There are a bunch of gems that provide logging that are just much more powerful than a built-in logger. But I only use two, so I will talk just about two. However, it's not that we only have two that are good. I'm pretty sure there are way more good logging libraries. So the semantic logger, I decided to talk about this one specifically because it's the one that I used a couple of years ago. Actually, it was like 10 years ago. Yeah, I didn't realize that. And this was the very first logging library that I used with like really powerful features. One of the things that I really loved about this gem was its support for different backends. They are called appenders. And what this essentially does is giving you a way of logging to different destinations using the same logger. And this is a very, very powerful feature. One of the things that I started doing when I started using this gem was to set up different appenders in different Rails environments. So for example, I would have two loggers, two appenders in development. One would log in debug all kinds of stuff to a file and SCD out, and the other would log to JSON using the same mechanism that is used on production, simply because I wanted to have that part always running in development and testing just to make sure that it works. But in test environment, when running tests, I would use a different setup because I had different requirements, different expectations from the logger. And this approach with a logger that supports different destinations, there's actually more features like conditional logging, filtering, and stuff. So you can really customize it to what you need. And I just loved the concept. It's got a bunch of other features, like even supports for metrics. It comes with support for many external services where you can log to probably Sentry and data log and whatnot. So it's a very powerful gem with kind of everything works out of the box approach. Yeah. Did I mention I'm giving this talk for the first time? So I decided to write my own gem. It's because of Hanami, honestly. So we were about to release Hanami 2.0, and we didn't have a good logger, and we wanted to have a logger that we would sort of own and control because it's just a very essential part of the stack. So I took a bunch of ideas that I liked in Semantic Logger, and I built this gem that is still using Hanami. And it's very similar to Semantic Logger, except that it is not based on global state. So every logger is an instance. So you create a logger, you get back an instance of a logger, and you also can add a bunch of backends that would write to different destinations. You can have tagging and also some nice features like logging templates for development environment, which even supports colorized output. I just couldn't help myself and added it. I don't like colors. So yeah, it's pretty powerful. The Hanami core team didn't change it much from what I've seen recently, so I just assume it's solid. And yeah, it powers Hanami, so it's quite stable now. So yeah, speaking about Hanami and Rails, logging in frameworks, I guess it's one of the most common use case that you're going to use a logger and logging in a framework. So what does Rails do? They have a built-in logger. However, it is like a standard library logger with a little bit of extra features. So it supports tagging. If I remember correctly, it's based on active support logger. Maybe it is active support logger even. And like I said, it doesn't support structured logging still. However, yeah, and it logs traditional text-based information. I guess I should mention that at some point Rails started doing logging with very nice features, like gathering some metrics with, you can see, with views and active record, and active controller stuff. So that that is pretty cool. And there's a lot of infrastructure in place with instrumentation and now also events, which I will talk about in a second. So there's a lot of stuff done. It's just missing structured logging. So let's talk about Rails event finally. So this is the new API. Like I said, there is some weird delay. I click once and it skips. Okay. So Rails event is a built-in, since Rails 8.1, a built-in API for emitting events. It is used for instrumentation as well. So I tested it today and I saw that all kinds of events about the internal workings of the Rails framework are there. So this is good news because you have a very nice unified interface for attaching subscribers to certain events, which also includes instrumentation. So I think that's a really nice step forward. And you can use it in a very similar way as logging. Again, logging and events, they are very similar. So you also have tagging, but you also have like a local context that you can set. And once you set it, all subsequent events that you will trigger will include in their payload whatever you set before. In this case, it's a request ID. So then, to listen to such events, all you need to do is to define a class with a method called emit, and it's going to receive events with payload and additional data like timestamp and stuff. And then it's up to you what you want to do with this. So if you have a structured logger, you can log it. So for example, in development, we can have like some extra debugging where we would store all kinds of event information, I don't know, in a log file or just in standard output. Again, you can do whatever you want with this. When it comes to the data itself, Rails events provide also source location, and the context here is the set context thing that I showed before. And the payload is, of course, whatever you passed in. One of the conventions that are very useful is using event identifiers that are most commonly grouped in namespaces. So here you have name, which is the name of the event, and it says order.created. So we can think of it like order is like a category of events, and then it's followed by some specific operation that took place. And this is very useful because you can use this information in other systems for all kinds of like grouping and displaying dashboards and tables and whatever you want. So, and of course, you can come up with your own conventions with additional information, and this will be your foundation for observability tooling and various ways of visualizing what your system is doing. When it comes to Hanami, the story is simpler. It's got built-in structured logger. It also has built-in event system. So you are basically ready with observability and structured logging and events with the default stack. So that is pretty cool. And you can configure the logger for different environments. So here's an example of something very common, which is setting the logger per production to be a JSON logger, and then it logs using structured data by default. So what's the path going forward? Yeah, we need a better logger, essentially, or logger, I should say. So the current landscape is that we have the core logger, which is nice and we like it, but it's not powerful enough. We've got a bunch of gems, way more than here. Not sure how many, but many. And frameworks really need logging. So they have their own solutions. They use some gems or some internal internal APIs, like in case of Rails, there is Rails logger with the new Rails event API for more like observability type of instrumentation. And Hanami logger is essentially dry logger, so it uses an external gem. I think that this is a no-brainer that we need a better logger. This is a big gap for me, at least, simply because it's essential. This is a crucial thing that these days literally every app needs or can benefit from quite a lot. It can be used for both development environments and production. So we just need it. This is an absolute win-win. I think that everybody would benefit from this. It's not like everybody wants to build their own logger, and it's me who did that. So let's just not do this and have a built-in solution that is part of the core library of the standard library. This is something that I very quickly realized when I started working with Elixir, because it uses Erlang's default built-in logger. And that's it. Like, this is the end of the story there. Like, nobody is building, libraries for logging in Elixir, because there is Erlang's logger with very powerful API with their own handlers and stuff. So it's just there, and that's great. We don't have that in Ruby, so we're wasting time. Makes no sense. Another thing that I think is important to notice is that, like I mentioned in the beginning, observability is a big topic these days. This is something that really helps in maintaining applications and building better products. So the better tools we have, like the better our products are, and we're wasting less time. So I think that building foundational tools to support observability is just important. And again, logging is very, very foundational for observability. So it would be good to have a standard core logger that supports this. Now, if we had that, Ruby would catch up with other languages. So you wouldn't hear that Ruby is dying. When it comes to imaginary API, we could probably take some inspiration from existing solutions. I'm not saying they are perfect and should be just copied one to one, but they definitely can serve as a source of inspiration. It would be definitely a good opportunity to rethink some things and reevaluate them. Probably looking at other ecosystems would be also a good idea to see what they have, assuming it's stable. And the built-in logger that supports structured logging could just look like this, because why not? It could have tags like existing loggers and even emitters as well in Rails. But that's just an idea. I'm not saying this should be like this. If you look at other languages, you're going to see that it's a solved problem. So I would just like to be a solved problem in Ruby as well. Cool. I'm done. Thank you. I'm not done. There are takeaways. I told you. Yeah, structured logging, tree, yada. I'm going to share this, okay? And I have a bonus, actually. I created 2 demos in Rails and Hanami with a simple setup with structured logging and events. So I will share it soon. Thank you.
Awesome.
Oh,
Thank you. Yeah, questions. A lot.
Okay. You go first.
I would actually have 2 questions.
No, that's not.
Do you know how it support notifications, which look very similar to this new event API, related to this new event API?
So I think they're going to, again, I haven't checked, but it seems like they're gonna just replace instrumentation with events. I mean, it would make sense. And how it's related? I mean, it's essentially so instrumentation and active support is very old. It goes back to Rails 3. So I think they're gonna just replace it. And instrumentation is kind of like more low level. So it's about like internals of like what's going on side of Rails, and essentially providing you with data like time that was spent on a query and stuff like that. So yeah, and it's a built-in feature in Rails, which is very, very nice actually. Did I answer?
What is both questions? Right.
That was the first one.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the second one would be like, you have an agenda to push that back on the Ruby mailing list or whatever.
Yeah, totally. I actually hope that somebody did that already. I'm gonna check, but if there's nothing, I will report an issue. Yeah.
Next question.
So I always wondered with structures logging, like in your examples, I think that the log level is also a structured key value thing and not, it shouldn't be a method, it should be one of the keys and values. Like info and debug.
Yeah.
It should be, it's just data also.
Yeah, sure. And it goes as data later on. Typically in logging libraries, you have like a base log method or function which accepts level as either parameter or as part of the payload. But typically it's separated from the payload because payload shouldn't be like confused with core pieces of information about the log entry, and level and timestamp are like very like core pieces of information in log entries, and also some things like, I don't know, process ID and stuff like that. So yeah, but yeah, you're right. Like level is a part of the data. Yeah.
Yes. I think one or two more.
Have you ever thought about the time spans? So can we use the structured login also for the time spans or not? Are they too different, or ideally you would see?
Yeah, I mean, you can totally do that. Yeah. But like spans are for tracing, so it's you can log spans and traces essentially using a logger. That's the logging versus logger thing that I mentioned. So yeah, you can log spans using structured logging, which is what typically happens. Yeah.
And I have a pressing question, right? This is a foundational concern. You said yourself, you built a structured logger ages ago. Why isn't there one? Like, do you have any insight? Like, I'd imagine there must be like 15 open issues in the Ruby bug tracker. Or if there are not, then what the heck?
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, that there are already issues about this. From what I know, typically when something is missing in Ruby, it's typically about ownership and lack of resources. So there are some things that could have been done years ago, but there was nobody who would be like, I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to own it, maintain it. And if I remember correctly, that's the expectation, that they need to know that once they introduce something, it's gonna be maintained.
Yeah.
It's not like, I have a good day, I'm gonna build a core logger, and on the next day, like, yeah, this sucks, I'm gonna go somewhere else. So, you know, but I know it's strange. Like, yeah, it's a foundational thing. So they should do it because it's gonna be maintained. Like, come on.
Maybe Matt's just isn't into logging, and that's
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah.
okay.
But when it comes to Rails itself, one concern was how to introduce it without breaking apps, and that's a tough problem. But I guess you could just have like a opt-in API, enable it based on like configuration.
Super interesting landscape. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome talk.